My name is Brian Flynn, and I'm the owner of Super7. Super7 started back in 2001 as a magazine. It was sort of a way to document my obsessive compulsive disorder with collecting like vintage Japanese monsters and toys. It started out basically much like a traditional punk rock zine. We just sort of did it ourselves, but because we were a little bit older, we actually knew a lot of digital production. We didn't really expect anybody to really care about it. It was a pretty niche topic, but once we put it out there, people responded really well. And it sort of organically grew over the years. We started making toys with different Japanese manufacturers and started designing our own toys. We opened up our first store in San Francisco and just sort of started making more and more stuff. I'm technically probably considered a graphic designer, but over the years it's not like anything else. You just like making stuff. It is a matter of just applying the same thinking to different media. The toys that I always gravitated to were Japanese monsters because the aesthetic was so sort of off the wall. Traditional American good guy, bad guy sort of stuff is very sort of straightforward. It's 2 arms, 2 legs, 2 eyes. It looks like a person, but he's wearing black. You get to Japan and the stuff that they were making, especially for kids, they knew like they were creating fantasy. So they went over the top. They kind of said, well, if we're going to make it crazy and fantastical, let's really go crazy. So it'd be like a giant locker or an ear with legs or a melting pile of sludge. It would just be kind of ridiculous stuff, and when they made the toys, they would cuten it up for kids, and so you'd have this really odd juxtaposition of sometimes these really sort of crazy, almost scary imagery presented in a very cute, kid-friendly way.
Sure.
And that aesthetic, once I saw it, was something that I had never seen before, and I just gravitated to this very odd juxtaposition of imagery and ideas. The first stuff that we did were people in Japan asking us to make what our rendition of traditional Japanese monsters would be, and over the years it became our version, so we started making our own characters.
Sure.
Secondarily, the manufacturing process in Japan, we're working with the same factories that made the original toys in the 60s and 70s. So there's sort of a level of craft with it. There's a level of materials that you can't get outside of Japan. So when we make the toys, I want to make the toys that I want to collect. So I will make those with those same cues and with the same attention to detail and craftsmanship that I want. Sometimes there's some general roadmaps that we have, but a lot of it is it's very intuitive. It's just, you know what you like when you see it, and sometimes it doesn't make sense. It's sort of that thing like to Milton's sake, which is the ice cream cone.
Sure.
That is an extension of the original Ghostland series, which is a manifestation of, it's a bunch of little ghosts that are manifestations of the things that killed them. And while all playful and cute, they're very sort of straightforward. Like, what's the cheesiest, cutest, goofiest, funniest thing you could make? So I was like, well, what if they're all candy? And so that sort of became the idea for Milton, was like, so it's an ice cream cone, there's a gumdrop with a candy wrapper head, right. There's a cookie that's got a bite taken out of his head that he eats when he's hungry. It's really simple, sort of playful things, but there wasn't a direct line to get there. It just sort of evolved and felt natural. We don't try to really force things. We're very particular about making sure that we understand when things don't work, but we don't try to force them at the same time. Sooner or later, the right idea will come to fruition, and we'll know it when we see it. And until then, let's just keep thinking of new ideas. We try to just be slower and more deliberate in our pacing, knowing how we would be able to have to buy them as collectors. That's one of my main critiques with most of the traditional toy companies, is if you buy 1, they're going to sell you 2 next month. If you buy 2, they're going to sell you 4 next month. If you buy 4 next month, they're going to sell you 16. You can't afford 16 in a month. There is a method to the madness. It's a little convoluted by the time it actually comes out, but we try to keep it nice, easy, and affordable so that people don't have to kill themselves and don't have to spend too much money to enjoy collecting the toys, because there's nothing worse than being frustrated by it. The thing that herks and jerks back and forth is just that we're dealing with a very small factory that does everything by hand, so there may be toys that I put in the orders months ago for that still haven't showed up, and something that I put in an order for 2 weeks ago that shows up one day.
Sure.
So a lot of time our scheduling and our planning goes out the window once we send it to the factory. But in the end, it sort of works out. We try to be very deliberate about making sure that we don't release too much of a single style at a time so that it doesn't become expensive. The Big Stormtrooper is the first piece. We've actually been working on it for over 2 years. We met with them several years ago after we made the wallpaper about possibly getting a license for the wallpaper. That wasn't really something they were interested in, but very surprisingly, the head of licensing, he realized that he had seen and knew of our toys in Japan. So once he realized that we understood that market, he said, well, what do you guys want to make? What would be the ultimate toy to make?
Sure.
And the Stormtrooper Jumbo was sort of a no-brainer. It was like, here's two things that both existed in the 70s, both things I collected, yet I never had these two things together. I would have killed for that toy as a kid. So it is, for them, a very off-the-beaten-path toy. We've been talking to them about a couple other things. They've been very open to a lot of the ideas that we've had, but execute the first idea first. Got to make sure the Stormtrooper comes out, make sure it's right, make sure it works. Well, the San Francisco store has been around for 6 years now, so it's got it's been able to establish itself and grow, and that stuff takes time. I think for us with St. Pete, part of it was working with Scott, who obviously runs this store. I lived in Tampa for a couple years. My dad was in the military. I'm originally from Texas. When we talked about expansion and when we started talking about it with Scott, our goal was not to go to LA and New York. It's like, you know what, I don't like those people. I want to go where people, when I go in, people will come in and go like, oh, wow, I've been waiting for this, or I didn't know this existed. Where if I was living here, what was the store I would want to come in? I want to go back to those places where I grew up where people didn't have the access. St. Pete obviously is definitely like, oh, St. Pete. Well then. But Scott lives here. He has a good feel for the area. I have a lot of friends that are from here. So it felt like a place where we could go and really try our hand at opening a second store. So anyway, give it a shot here, see how it goes.